Morning, everybody. Welcome back to Let's Play Every Day. Tim McNiff with Darrell T and Andy Greder, 2/3 of our expected panel. G2 off doing G2 things. We'll add him if he shows up. So watching social media last night and today, a very, very Minnesota night in sports last night. It was not a good night for the locals. And somebody put on there, I've gone to 3 sporting events locally and they've lost all 3. Should I stop going to the games? And I'm like, that is like me at 11 asking that question. Here we are 48 years later. I'm like, yeah, it's not us. It's, just unfortunate. Andy, did you spend any time with that game last night?
Yeah, I watched probably more of Game 5 of the Wild Blues series than I have any of the previous 4. I'm left with thinking, hey, you squander a great game from Kirill Kaprizov, who just, dominates that first period, scores 2 wonderful goals. You go into the second period with the lead after trailing what I felt like was a pretty soft penalty to give the Blues a power play. The Wild have been bad with the man advantage, but they get 2 goals in that first period and everybody's feeling pretty good. The place looked electric. I think everybody that went to that game, while they were disappointed leaving, probably felt great going into that game and felt great going into that first period and second period and towards the end there. Oh, we got a baby.
Yeah, we
do.
I had a emergency wardrobe change at 9:28.
Well, introduce your sidekick.
Well, she did. My sidekick had.
Introduce your sidekick.
Oh my goodness!
So this is Zayna.
Wow.
Say what's up, everybody. Say hi to the room.
Oh, she is just beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
Zayna's how old?
7.5 months.
And she's your first.
Yep.
And asking you at this moment, how do we feel about a second?
The first is really, really good. I don't think if I had 2, Tim, I'd be available at 10:05. Like, I was almost ready.
All right.
No, my bad, Andy. I didn't mean to.
No. Real good.
Man,
Andy, please finish your thought.
That was way more entertaining than what I was going to say.
Best thing we've seen, at least in the last 16 hours.
I know. Our ugly mugs compared to her. Yeah. I mean, it just Kirill Kaprizov was electric in that first period. And just, when you're squandering, a talent like he has without anybody else around him, I just wonder where Kevin Fiala is, right? I mean, he's scoreless in 5 games of the playoffs. He had a couple assists last night, but for a guy that had nearly 90 points during the 82-game regular season to not have any goals in the playoffs, they're certainly missing him right now.
And in the matchup of lines, St. Louis has been putting their top checking line against our most physical line or our third line. So it's not like Fiala's line is facing that top line defense either, which makes the whole thing somewhat more disappointing. So G2, did you spend any time with that game last night? The Wild game?
I actually did. And then the Blues scored. And I was like, I think I'm bad luck.
We've already been through that, right? You and everybody else in the state with that same reaction.
How about us doing our homework? Usually we kind of mail it in on hockey, and now we're here like watching the games and doing our homework and coming all prepared to class. Look at this.
Right.
But the
I
reason
just look at Jesse's Instagram and be like, all right, talk about.
But the reason why I wanted to ask, and Darrell and I had a conversation often, and he just caught up on the highlights and read about it also. I don't recall, and I've seen a lot of Minnesota sports, I don't recall a game where one player has played so dominant, was clearly the best player on the court, field, ice, and that team did not come out with the win. And he was just not, from a goal-scoring standpoint, end-to-end, defensively, skating the puck, setting up his teammates, scoring the goals where he barely had the puck on his stick. I think about that second year of athletes that came in at the same time in Anthony Edwards, Justin Jefferson, and Kirill Kaprizov. And I just think that win, lose, or draw with this series, and I'm not ready to concede it yet, if we can keep these 3 around for a while, we're going to win our share of games, I think.
I think you're right. Other piece I kind of excited about, I hope that everything gets going, but we're not complaining about the goaltending, right now. So it feels like the team is surely going in the right direction. I know you got those big contracts hanging over the head, from Suter and Parisi, and I don't even can't begin to understand that. So it's above my pay grade. Obviously, I'd love to be getting paid by somebody that I wasn't doing anything for any longer as well. But that's how it works. But I think it's the organization's going in the right direction, and this young kid, Kirill, is like he's got the juice. You got him, you got Buxton, you got Anthony Edwards. You're right. It's hopefully it's an exciting time here in the Twin Cities with our sports teams.
He was truly remarkable last night, both ends. But you brought up the goaltending, and I asked Jessie Pierce yesterday, is this maybe a game where you mix up the goaltending? And she rebuked me, and I was just asking because the head coach had said that we may have some lineup changes, and I thought maybe that's where he was going. But now here we are. Now, do I think Marc-Andre Fleury cost his team the game last night? I don't. I don't think he was the ultimate responsibility in that. But at the same time, he didn't steal the game. He didn't win the game. So now here you go. You're coming back. You're going to St. Louis now that you're back to the wall. Cam Talbot, the last time he lost a game was 70 days ago, like more than 2 months. Do you drag him out of mothballs and try to throw him in to shake things up? Or at this point, do you just stay with Fleury and ride that horse?
I think you stay with Fleury. I mean, Cam hasn't played in a couple of weeks now. I think it just makes sense to go with Fleury, even if he hasn't, provided the saves to help you win the game. He hasn't really cost you on the other end. I think, just listening to people that are more experienced than me, I think, he's given up quite a few rebounds, which I think is a little bit concerning that he leaves the puck kind of out on the ice for the Blues to capitalize. And I think that's kind of what has happened at times for the Wild. I think more so, I think it's just unfortunate that we're in this spot, that you have a Wild team that has the second most points in the West, and they're facing the Blues, which are the fourth most points in the West in the first round of the playoffs. I don't understand the NHL's change in format away from the way the playoffs are always done, which is 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, to this idea of kind of creating more regional matchups and rivalries geographically. It doesn't really make sense to not reward your best teams with an opportunity to make deep playoff runs. That doesn't make sense to me. I remember Craig Leopold, the Wild owner, a few years ago when they were, a good team and making playoff runs into the second round. And Craig Leopold would talk about how, hey, we have to get to that second round to be able to turn a profit as an organization. So I don't understand why the NHL handcuffs its best teams in matchups against other quality teams to then have lesser teams make it deeper into the playoffs. This format doesn't make sense to me, and I wish they'd just go back to the more standard format where your best teams are making playoff runs. And then if you have, the Wild advance, you have the Blues advance, well, then you're able to kind of create that rivalry in the second round, in the semifinals, when there's even more on the line. I just don't understand the format that the NHL switched to, I think, 8 or 10 years ago.
There's a lot of things the NHL does that defy reason or explanation. But in this case, I couldn't agree with you more. At any rate, we've got game 6 tomorrow night in St. Louis, and the odds are about 80% in the Blues' favor that they don't come back here to St. Paul. But we'll see. G2, before you came in, we just mentioned it was a rough night for the locals all the way around. I mean, the Twins did not fare well. The Lynx are in a world of hurt, too, for a second year in a row. Also want to just mention this quickly. The Twins made a trade for a pitcher by the name of Chris Paddock right before the season started from San Diego. He left Sunday's game with right elbow inflammation. Here's a bad sign. They talked to him about his situation. He referred to the fact that he had Tommy John surgery in 2016 and that he had a stem cell injection last year in a move that ended his season. And they asked him about his arm now before he's even had it examined. And he said, unfortunately, at this point in my career, if it's torn or anything crazy like that, I think I'm just going to move forward with surgery just because I would already miss the majority of this season if I did get a stem cell. That puts it at the end of July before I'm even back on the mound. Let's say that it does tear after that. Now I'm looking at not coming back until 2024. Here it comes. And I just don't want to risk that. That's free agent year. So he's saying he's going to just flush this season and have the surgery now for 2 years down the line. He can be max healthy to get the max dollars. Do we have buyers? I'm wondering what the recourse is now. I mean, is there a certain amount of days or starts he could have made before the Twins can get their guy back or their money back or get another player? Because this doesn't seem like it's going to end well for the locals.
I mean, they need to do their medical exams and understand if they've got damaged goods or not before they make that trade, right? I mean, when you're going through the process, if there is a red flag that goes up, you should be able to pull the plug before you go through with the trade. And it sounds like he's had problems with this elbow in the past, as recently as last year. So I just don't quite understand why you go through with that. I think the Twins have had a narrative around them of going for pitchers that they feel like they can squeeze something more out of the orange with. And when you watch last night's game and you see Justin Verlander with a no-hitter at age 39, a future Hall of Famer, you see the value of what an ace can do, right? And the Twins do not have that. And I think back to the Jose Barrios trade and think, hey, they weren't contending when they traded him, but hey, look at them now and look at how they were able to bounce back and be competitive now. Why pull the plug on Jose Barrios at that time? Because he's an ace, if not an A ace, an A- ace, a B+ ace, and you don't have that in this rotation now. And while they're in a good spot, they could be in a much better spot if they had Jose Barrios.
Boy, they handled it with kid gloves for years till you get to this point in his career. So I'm with you 110% there. So the Twins fall last night, and their closest thing they have to an ace, Joe Ryan, gave up runs in second and fourth innings and didn't make it out of the fifth. His worst start so far this season, but brighter days are ahead. So our Lynx, last year they started the season 0-4. And Cheryl Reeves said, we came in out of shape, and that's not going to happen to us again. We're not going to start the season 0-4. I said in this program just yesterday, watch this game tonight because they're playing a team that's 0-2 and has 5 rookies. They start 2 of them and winless. If we lose this game, it's a bellwether that this team's in trouble. Guess what? We lost this game. This team is in trouble. They lost 82-76. They were outscored 15-7 in the fourth quarter, but here's where the issue is. Not only were they outdone by a player that we cut who was instrumental in the success of the team last year, but Ariel Powers was on the bench making 1 of 10 shots, finished the game on the bench. Adriel McCautry didn't play at all in the second half after scoring just 6 points in the first 7.5 minutes. She tried something. She brought in some veteran players, hoping she could, again, like you said, Andy, squeeze a little bit more juice out of them. So far, this looks like this whole thing, which I thought may be an issue when the season dragged on, looks like it's maybe never can get out of the gates. And I've never seen Cheryl Reeves swing and miss this hard. And it's early, but wow.
Do you think it's already time to kind of raise the red flag, and or do you feel like we're like I don't, because I'm like I trust and believe in Cheryl Reeves. I also believe that veteran players sometimes take a little bit longer to get going. They don't worry, they don't stress, they don't have as many things going on. So I feel like if we're 0-9, then I think we got a pretty big problem. But I think it being 0-4, 0-5, if we can recalibrate, if we can figure things out, and there's nothing more exciting than a player who got released from a team or cut by a team to come back and get things going, knock down 3, block a shot, make an open layup, get your juices flowing. And those old guys, or old ladies, need to, hey, we got to regroup, got to get out the day. We got to refocus, and we got to start bringing it, to have that type of victory. So hopefully, I'm not raising the red flag for the Lynx hit. I believe and trust in Cheryl Reeves, not quite implicitly, but I do believe that she's an excellent coach and an excellent motivator.
I guess they've played 3 games, man. I've just seen Angel McCautry has been on the bench all 3 games. 36 years old and coming off knee surgery, and there was a time when she could score with anybody in the WNBA, the best. I just don't know if she's got it.
She might be saving it.
It's time to display it then.
Well, she also might not be healthy. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, I think especially in the women's game, they come back from injuries. It's a different game. It's way more play below the rim. You can survive much more off fundamentals and execution than you can in the guy's name, where it's a lot about isolation to get into the basket and knocking down threes. So it's I'm not, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully her knee gets better, and hopefully the team gets better, the chemistry gets better, and they figure out the right rotation, especially with veteran players. Usually those things can come along, in that first third of the season. If it doesn't, then we press the panic button, and maybe there's some wholesale trade or some other thing we can do. But I'm just not ready to raise the red flag yet.
I wonder what Sylvia Fowles does, right? Obviously, this is her farewell tour, and they're 0-3 in it. And last year they were 0-4 and made the playoffs and were able to bounce back. I wonder if Sylvia Fowles kind of has kind of a player-led kind of thing to say, hey, I'm not going out like this. We need to turn it around quickly. And if she's really the causation, just given that it's her last year.
Well, I mean, she had 26 points and 14 boards last night, so she's doing everything she can on the court. Hey, Andy.
Yeah.
It was announced yesterday that the Loons are going to play a friendly and against an English Premier club. How big a deal is this?
Yeah, so they've played 9 different friendlies since 2014 against teams from Mexico and Costa Rica and English Premier League teams and German teams as well. So this is probably the biggest one that they've faced in Everton, which is a historical team in Liverpool that has never been relegated out of the English Premier League. So they're in a battle to get relegated right now. But if they're able to stay up in the Premier League, they have a very big following, and there'll be people that'll travel all over the country to be able to come to Minnesota to watch their team in a friendly, in a preseason game. They'll be getting ready for their next English season next year. So yeah, they've played a bunch of friendlies over the years, from Swansea to Bournemouth to Hertha Berlin to Saprissa in Costa Rica. They've got SC Paderborn, another German team coming in here this summer. It's an exhibition game. It's a way to grow the game. It's a way to connect with teams from other countries. Obviously, they don't matter in the standings, but it's able to kind of test yourself against other teams from other leagues and grow the game and create different bonds with different clubs in different parts of the world.
Hey, for someone who doesn't know very much about soccer and the different leagues, although I should with two son-in-laws that play soccer, a friendly is like kind of like a super non-conference game. Like you're just someone that's like just a totally different, just to get exposure, like an exhibition game of like for the U.S. playing against like a college team or the Slovenian team or something like that. Is that right? Yeah.
It's just an exhibition game. It'd be like a preseason game. Let's say the Vikings play a team in Mexico City that has their own team in their own Mexican league, and they just play a preseason game. It doesn't count for anything, but you get to kind of see yourself against other teams in other leagues. The English Premier League is the best league in the world. So an MLS is probably in the top 8 or 10. So it's a step up to play a team from that league. So you get to see yourself against a higher level of competition, a much bigger budget, more expensive players, better skill sets. Now they won't be playing all of their best guys, given the fact that it's an exhibition game. You'll see some of their young guys, some of their backups. So you won't get their A squad, if you will, but it's a chance to see yourself against someone else. And like I said, kind of grow the game, and they'll have a lot of fans from across the U.S. that follow the English Premier League and Everton in particular to come to Minnesota and watch them.
Cool.
It's kind of like when the Harlem Globetrotters will play somebody besides the Washington Generals.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, Minnesota.
I thought they only played the Washington Generals. It seemed like it was always playing the green and the yellow team.
Yeah,
the green and the yellow team are always like just kind of like.
Yeah, they're like we're getting paid the same.
When the Generals are not like that is when you're dumb enough to play in the celebrity game against them like 2 hours before. So here you have all these guys who played college ball, and this is their job now, is to lose to the Globetrotters. But their job is not to lose to you. So you come out there, they play lockdown defense. There's no talking. There's no fun. They're there. They just dispatch of you.
So Tim, you're saying you got your stuff pinned on the
more than once in different markets. I'd be like, "Oh, this is going to be." I was like, the second time I was ready for it, but the third time I was just like, "Yeah, if I get it, and I'm just going to do a Mike Maxson gun. I'm just shooting it because these guys are not. You can't drive. No, they're not having it. These guys can really play basketball.
No doubt.
Did you
Better
have a
than you.
confetti bucket? See, that's the trick. You need a confetti bucket.
I did not have a ball in the string. Did not have the confetti bucket. Man, what was I thinking?
You should have just done you should have done your own Marcus Haynes. Maybe just kind of, you should have showed
Slid on the
the
floor.
incredible ball handling skills that you developed in Stillwater over the growing up over there. You should have put that on display.
I did my old sliding on the floor DT, but it was not intentional. It was just sort of a mad scramble. So I want to get into this one, you guys, because this is something in Darrell's family. A lot of people don't know this, but Darrell's family has a history in the sport of volleyball, even before through marriage, and even before that with his biological family. Yesterday, for the second time in as many years, the Minnesota State High School League voted against making boys volleyball a sanctioned MSHSL sport. Last year, they missed it by 2 votes. They needed 32 yes votes. They had 30. They came back yesterday in year 5 of trying to get this thing done, and they received 31. Reading this, somebody made the point where they said, and I don't have this in front of me, I must have edited it, but they said, one of the athletic directors over there said, X number of years ago, my school was 90% Caucasian. Now it's 50-50. And I'm having trouble finding enough participants for all the levels of baseball and some other traditional sports that we do as MSHSL. But I go in the gym and there's a lot of kids standing around who want to play volleyball. And so volleyball is huge. I don't think most Minnesotans know what happens at the Minneapolis Convention Center each and every weekend, where it's just packed with these tournaments that happen. A lot of money changes hands in Minneapolis just on the trade of people coming in these tournaments and going out. But the boys here, they're up to, I think, something like participation in a club sport. 53 schools and 1,400 athletes, just as a club sport, and 40% of that I was told is roughly Asian. And I'm wondering, is this a case of the metro schools not getting the support of the outstate schools? Because I'm wondering how they could pass on this for a second year in a row when they said 5 years ago you needed to show us that there's an interest, and here we are 5 years later, and they've got that much interest. I think this doesn't make sense to me that they would say no once, much less twice. What am I missing?
Well, I mean, just reading some of the stories that kind of explained why they voted the way that they did is they were concerned, or they said they were concerned about gym space. They said they were concerned about the number of officials. They said they were concerned about what season is best for it, if it's best in the fall or if it's best in the spring. And if you're in the spring, do you take away gym space from baseball and softball teams that need to be inside when the weather's gross in the spring in Minnesota? Finances, funding another sport. But yeah, I think it does impact disproportionately people of color that have that as part of their heritage. Asian countries, Latin American countries. I think that is who's impacted negatively with this. And you'd hope that they would be able to find a way to push this through and to get these opportunities for kids in schools that need it, that want to be active, that want to have a connection to their school, to be able to find a better path towards graduation. You'd think that there'd be a way to make that happen. I wonder, when lacrosse passed, I wasn't involved in and didn't follow it very closely, but did they find the same kind of hurdles that they had to clear, or did they get approved pretty quickly and easily? I wonder if there was a discrepancy, because I'd imagine that lacrosse is probably a more affluent, wider sport. That did they have the same problems? I'm curious about that.
My recollection is, and I knew some people, and I was working in sports at that time, so I would do stories on it as they were going through the club process. But my recollection is it was an easier path because they were sanctioning both boys and girls at the same time.
Sure. Yeah.
So here you're not trying to bring a boys sport in, and there's this wonder about gender equity. And I'm like, well, if they want to boost the fastest growing sport, they should just expand girls wrestling, because that's in the United States, it's the fastest growing female sport there is. And so But I just don't understand this one because some of the arguments they used, they said last year, well, if you're going to put it in the spring, you're being kind of restrictive. So this year, the volleyball people said, we don't care. You can put it in the fall or you can put it in the spring. We'll go wherever you tell us to go. And then they're like, well, you're lacking specificity, so they used it against them. And I think that's moving the goalposts. I just think
popular.
that it's just.
That's popular though. It's unfortunate, and my brother unfortunately holds the distinction of, I think, he claims he's the only Minnesota male athlete to ever get a scholarship to play volleyball. So my brother played volleyball at Pepperdine and in California. So it's and I went out with Hugh McCutcheon and some other volleyball people to talk about it. I'm like the football guy, but the crazy thing is, like, every single person in my family plays volleyball except for me. My wife, my sister, my daughter, my brother, my dad, my stepmom, my mom, every single person played volleyball. They're peppering, and I'm like the worst volleyball player on earth, but the importance of the sport and the beauty of the sport is there. And it makes a ton of sense for it to be a fall sport to capture some of those maybe basketball players, maybe somebody didn't make the football team. Or maybe it's a baseball player or something like that. I think there's a lot of, or those track athletes, those springy guys that aren't quite basketball players, but they jump really high, and those guys make really, really good outside hitters in volleyball. And so, there's a lot of reasons to have it. I know there's excuses, I call them excuses. This gym space, it makes, when you want to do something, you do it. In this case, for what's going on with these young men in their lives, it makes a lot of sense to have it a Minnesota State high school sanctioned sport where these young men get a chance to compete against others and go around the globe playing one of the most beautiful sports in the world.
I bet Race Thompson and True. I bet you those guys, if they played volleyball, those guys would be menaces too at the net.
They play a little. I understand they have good hands from what my wife and my dad. I don't know. I could talk about basketball, football. I don't know, but they do have good hands and they are incredibly springy. So yeah, they would be pretty good volleyball players.
Yeah,
they got the length.
Go
ahead.
Okay. No, I'll just say, like, if they've been voting on it for 5 years, I kind of feel like that's something that the league isn't doing their due diligence with. Because if you've been voting on this and keep telling them, well, here's what we need to see, here's what we need to see, and waiting for, the volleyball people to come with all these facts, like, it's growing. And it's just out the Midwest. Like, in the South, it's huge. And you have top athletes that play in the West Coast. I have a nephew who could be, playing out basketball. And it's kind of one of these things where it present it to the kids. Because it kind of seems like they're waiting on the athletes to keep showing up and showing up and showing up. But a lot of times you have kids who would get involved with this sport if they're like, hey, we have something new for you. They might not do all the groundwork, but, like I feel like it's unfortunate. I feel like kind of Minnesota's behind the ball on this one. Set. That was a horrible joke, but
you got to try it out.
Yeah,
somewhere.
When you just fall short of two votes and one vote, like, what's it going to take? Just pass it and let them figure it out.
You got to go to their house and walk around with signs.
I mean, they even called the probably the biggest celebrity, the biggest influencer of volleyball in the state of Minnesota, Hugh McCutcheon, testified. Yeah. Or gave a presentation yesterday, and he said he wasn't asking, he was begging for it. So, I mean, when you have Hugh McCutcheon, who has shown the benefits of volleyball, not just in the state of Minnesota with the dominant Gopher women's team, but on the international level by taking the U.S. men's to a gold medal, I think, when you have a heavy hitter like that and you can't get it through, it's discouraging.
It is discouraging. I feel like it's cruel and unusual punishment at this point. All right, we're up against the clock, 10 o'clock, things we didn't get a chance to touch on today. Just good to know. I know you guys will all sleep better tonight knowing that Tom Brady has a job lined up after football.
I was concerned about that. I was very Tom. He's on my heart. I am
How's
glad
he going to make money?
He's got an exit strategy, so that's important.
Giselle and he were maybe looking at an income drop, but not now. So that's good to know.
It shows you how desperate Fox is, right? I mean, they have to announce on an investor call that they have a future color commentator, not a current one, after they lose Aikman and Buck, that's not a good look. That, oh yeah, down the road we got a guy, but who do you have now? I think is the better question.
That is a good question. It's not going to be Mike Tyson, but also at the same time, he's not going to have any charges after the drunk guy tried baiting him into getting beat up for money. So the judge said no charges against Tyson, and even a drunk guy, after being captured on several phones, said, yeah, no charges against him. And just on the way out,
Probably not a good move.
no. Speaking of bad moves, want to just talk about the passing of, and I know G2 and Andy, you guys were too young for this, but passing of a guy by the name of Bob Lanier. Bob Lanier was a big man in the NBA, and my favorite Bob Lanier moment was the young Boston Celtics with Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and everybody were just a wrecking ball in the early 80s. And they were punking the Pistons, and just a Saturday afternoon game, it meant nothing. And Kevin McHale did something that was not captured on camera to Bob Lanier. And as he's running down the court, Lanier reaches out, grabs Kevin McHale, pulls him back, drapes his arm like over Kevin's, like this, and he's got him locked up. And McHale's like struggling, like to get out of this. And Lanier's like in Kevin McHale's ear, and McHale can't go anywhere. And Lanier pulls him in, says something, then takes him and shoves him. And McHale takes a couple steps, looks at Bird and those guys. The Celtics are on the floor. They're laughing. They're dying. They're almost wetting themselves, because Lanier has just threatened Kevin McHale. And so years go by. And I was at a Timberwolves practice, and it was kind of this quiet moment with Kevin McHale. Nobody else is around. And I got up the courage to ask him about that. Kevin McHale was prickly. Let's put it that way. And so he cuts me off halfway through this whole thing. He remembers, he looks at me and he says, you know what that was about? He goes, I did something I shouldn't have done. And Bob said to me, never, ever do that again. And guess what? I never, ever did that again, because Bob Lanier he was a man. In today's game, he would have been recruited by whatever team, been a part of a super team, and you'd have heard of him. But he was on the Pistons. Yeah. Not good.
8-time All-Star, the All-Star MVP. So he's definitely a talent. I saw that they were talking about him on TNT last night, and just seeing some of those highlights and seeing that he was definitely a pillar in the league and ambassador for the game of basketball.
Absolutely. A great player.
And back in the day too, Darrell, where guys didn't lift weights, Bob didn't need to lift weights. Bob was a true giant.
He was inside. His game inside was he was fun to watch, when I was a kid. So that he was a tremendous player.
Big man. Andy Greder, are you working on anything that the people need to know about?
Well, Minnesota United plays a U.S. Open Cup game tonight in the 4th round of the national tournament. They're in the round of 32. They play Colorado Rapids tonight at Allianz Field. So if they win that, they'll move on to the round of 16. So I'm busy with that and doing something on the Gopher football recruiting class, which has 4 in-state linemen in it, and doing a recap of those guys and how the foundation of the next recruiting class is big up front with in-state recruits.
Do we know when the kid from Cooper is going to make his choice?
Yeah, he's going on Jackson Howard, the 4-star defensive lineman / tight end, Willie Howard's son, the 4-star recruit who has 50+ offers, including the Gophers. He was at their spring game at the end of April. He's going on official visits in June when you're able to do that. Miami, LSU, other schools are in the mix for him. And the plan is to do it in July before he starts his senior year, make his decision.
On pins and needles until then. All right. Listen, you guys, I appreciate you. Thanks so much. And one more shot, is Zayna Rose, or is she not, is she camera shy at the moment, or not within reach?
No need to be on pins and noodles over a 4 or 5-star recruit ever.
CZ.
Ever.
Yeah. No.
I'll do my best, Darrell. It's me. No promises.
What?
No
We
promises.
missed Zayna. We just missed a lady. Bring her back up. The cutest thing we've seen all morning.
There we go.
Wow.
She might be perfect.
Yeah.
Hey.
I think we'll go out on that.
She's trying to get to this microphone. All right, sign off.
She's
Sign off.
earlier.
Yeah, she was.
Beautiful.
She got stage fright. She doesn't get that from her dad. That must be from her mom.
All right, you guys, thanks so much for joining. Thank you for checking us out. This is Let's Play Every Day. So we encourage you to get off the sideline, get in the game, because